Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Welcome back to Into the Work, therapy for empaths and seekers. I'm so glad you're here for this conversation on a topic that affects so many of us, especially those of us who feel deeply or connect deeply or want to connect deeply with other people. Today, we're diving into the difference between woundmates and soulmates, and more importantly, how your nervous system, your emotional habits, and your vibration play a role in which kind of relationship you attract and what kinds you maintain. So let's jump in. So let's start off with, what is a woundmate? A woundmate is someone you form a connection with based on shared pain. Perhaps you share a similar trauma, or, maybe upon meeting, you had similar unresolved emotional wounds. Now, these relationships often feel kind of intense, maybe even a little intoxicating. They can be friendships, they can be intimate partnerships, relationships and that such, but they definitely feel like they get you, right? They get you. But what they often get is your pain, not necessarily your healing. So let's talk about that. Carolyn Myss talks about this through her concept of woundology. Now, I discovered Carolyn about 10 years ago, and this concept that she coined as woundology, that we become so identified with our pain that it becomes our primary way of relating to people. Pain becomes the currency, and the relationships rooted in it become places where we bond over what's broken rather than what's possible, okay? So when you look at creating woundmates, you're realizing that these relationships were formed bonding over difficult stuff, bonding over what's broken rather than what's possible, right? And so it's not that anybody is a bad person. It's just that the connection was formed when you were defined by your own wounds. Something, that happens a lot, especially when we have long-term relationships. So if you look back and you have friendships from back when you were a kid and you're like, wow, we've been friends since we were 5. A lot of times we see in those relationships, we can see some of this woundology where you became friends at a point when some really difficult stuff was going on, aka just being a teenager, right? But things happening that are difficult, you tend to bond in those moments. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, they may have felt very safe, and that may have felt very familiar to you to meet somebody who can go there with you, and that's how you bond and connect and all that good stuff. But familiar doesn't mean healthy. And if most of your conversations are about the things that are wrong, the things that aren't working, the things that are broken, the people that are screwing them, the people that aren't treating them right, or the pain, the wounds that they have that are getting triggered in relationships with other people or in life, And that becomes the basis of the relationship. It may be familiar, but it doesn't mean it's healthy. So let's talk a little bit about the nervous system and why we might even choose relationships like this, right? Here's the hard truth. Many of us are more comfortable with pain than even peace. I know that sounds crazy, but bear with me. We typically, especially in this culture in America, we typically tend to be more pain avoidant than pleasure seeking. We have a wiring in our nervous system to be looking out for what kind of painful things might happen. In fact, we just might spend all our time fixated on the bad things, the hard things. Life is hard. And that we have to kind of focus on those things as a protective stance. It's totally in the unconscious too. It's not even something you wake up and think, I'm going to look for pain today. But what happens is that you become so attached to being pain avoidant that you're very, very few times you are pleasure seeking. And so that avoidance leads us right back into the pain because we get what we look for, right? So you're trying to avoid pain by focusing on it, and then you end up getting more pain. So think about it like this. You met this person at a time when you were in survival mode, perhaps. Think about the relationships that you have that you're like, yes, we were woundmates, and now it's kind of not working. You were scanning the world not for joy and alignment, right? You weren't like, hey, let's talk about how amazing life is and how amazing our lives can be, and let's go for it and support each other. You're probably more fixated on safety and remaining safe and keeping safe in the broader sense, right? Or what your nervous system mistakenly read as safety. Pain can feel like home when that's what you've known and what you've been loyal to. So when you have a pain story that you've been very loyal to, meaning you have allowed it to sort of define you, that is how you know that you are leading with your pain, right? You're defined through it versus having it be something that you would like to put behind you and move forward away from and go towards joy, go towards excitement, go towards, freedom from that pain story. But this is why trying to change the dynamic in a wound mate relationship can feel so threatening to people. So I don't know if you've experienced this where you're like, okay, yeah, Michelle, I have a friend who's just bringing me down. And it's not that I don't love them and I want good things for them. And I feel even bad saying this. We did bond in our wounds and I don't want to do it anymore. But changing the dynamic, right? So when you are like suddenly like, hey, let's have a higher vibe conversation here, right? Or you express that you'd like to try to spend your time together in a different way. The dynamic between the moonmate relationship can feel so threatening when somebody tries to change it. And so as you begin to heal, as you raise your vibration, as you commit to higher thoughts, higher standards, deeper peace, right? More connection with yourself, more connection with the possibility of just beautiful things happening to you. If you can really try to shift your energy that way, then you can probably also see how that is somehow a betrayal to the person who met you in the mud, right? Who met you in the dark parts. And they may resist your growth. They may guilt you, shame you, or try to pull you back down into the pattern, right? You're not being there for me. Why aren't you showing up for me? They may feel frustrated with you. They also might feel very threatened in the sense that they might feel like you're suddenly judging them now. That's a really common one because there's an insecurity. It's, pain and coming from that place and having attachments to pain stories don't come from strength. They come from fragility. And so, of course, it's possible for someone to feel threatened by it in such a way that they feel that you are now going to be looking down on them because now you're all high and mighty in your positivity. And they're just going to wait for you to fall back down so then you'll want their friendship again, right? And so we are looking at very toxic patterns in a relationship. And I hate to say it, but it's true. And this, again, I want to say this can be the most beautiful people that you're friends with that just have these toxic patterns of relating. And they are very stuck in it. And they almost need to cling tighter to it when you try to change it. Now, let's talk about the vibrational shift here. When you're stuck in a wound-mate dynamic, your vibration is low, right? You leave that encounter, and I'm telling you, you're not flying high, right? Like you're You might feel loved, you might feel seen, and they might be a great person to come to when you are in pain. That might say, this is the person I like to go to when I'm really struggling, but when I'm feeling good, I don't really want to go there. And then you have to look at your own patterns and saying, okay, so what is it what needs are being met in this relationship for you to keep going back at those times? And recognize that you might be trapped in cycles of rumination, emotional reactivity, anxiety, maybe some unresolved issues, grief, or other feelings that keep bringing you back to this person. And you yourself have to look at that and hold space for it and look at what needs to be identified and healed. But when you begin to heal, when you start prioritizing peace over chaos or joy over suffering, your entire energy field changes. Like literally, we could measure vibration and see how much higher it gets. And you can sustain happiness for longer. And wow, does that start to feel really good, right? You're starting to feel the high and you're like, I want more of this. So it can be super disorienting to try to make this shift in the relationship because you're no longer broadcasting the same frequency. And for someone who's still operating from their woundology, from their, wound place, that new signal might be unreadable. They don't even know what to do with it. They're like, who is this? This is not my friend. And this is why it's so important to identify any wound mates in your life and ask yourself, is this relationship supportive of my healing? Does it keep me tied to a version of me that I have outgrown? Will it allow me and support me and cheer me on to become the highest and best version of myself? That is a very important question because it's crucial. We are getting down to the wire in our lives when we come to a point where we recognize that it's time to make a change, right? You are getting down to the point where, if this topic hits you, it's because you're getting down to the point where it's no longer tolerable. You're not really wanting this for yourself anymore. And so it's really important to identify who your wound mates are so you can start to decide, what kind of boundaries do I need? How do I manage this? How can I release this relationship from my life? Or how can I keep this relationship in my life? Now, not every wound mate, we'll say, needs to be cut off immediately, but every one of these relationships requires some clarity. Can this person grow with you? Are they willing to do their own work? And can you introduce new ways of relating that are based on respect, boundaries, and shared evolution? If the answer is yes to any of those three questions, then this is a relationship you can certainly stay in and you can bring your ideas to. And even though you've been wound mates, you can acknowledge it together. You can say, hey, let's really support each other in this. Let's change this. I care for you so much. I'm so fortunate to have you in my life. Let's really try to raise each other up and do better. And if the answer to these questions is no, if the relationship requires you to stay wounded in order to stay connected, it may be time to walk away. And that's really hard and it's really painful, but many of us have had to face that. And I know that that's, really challenging and feels kind of tragic. But here's the deeper truth. You're not betraying them by healing. You're not. You're being loyal to your soul's path. You're being loyal to yourself, to your soul, why you're here, what you're doing, your purpose, your well-being, right? You're going to be here for X amount of time. How do you want to spend it? And if you're going to be trudging through the mud all the time and feeling terrible, that has a physical consequence, right? And so how can we look at, all right, my health is important to me, my well-being is important to me, how I feel every day is important to me. When we're pain avoidant, we kind of feel like it's just par for the course. Like I'm just expecting that things are going to feel hard a lot. I'm overwhelmed and exhausted all the time. And if that's true for you, right, and this is where you want to get out of, and you want to leave that, then it's really important for you to create clarity with your friendships and clarity for what you need for support around doing that. You can use it as a statement where you're saying, I'm going to ask for some support here. This is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm working on. And maybe they jump on board and they're like, that's really cool. Let me do it too. Let's do it together. And that's great. If you find somebody is threatened, irritated, if they are rejecting, if they aren't willing to do their own work, again, can this person grow with you? Are they willing to do their own work? And can you introduce new ways of relating that are based on respect, boundaries, and shared evolution? We're supposed to be growing. We're not supposed to be staying the same. We're just not. That's not what this is about. Whether you want to or not, it just won't happen. I mean, you can stay stuck, but it doesn't feel good, I should say. So let's talk about soulmates and a call to peace. Often a soulmate doesn't mean perfect. When we choose friends and partnerships in relationships in life, we cannot expect perfection. We can expect some chaos. We can expect conflict. We can have difficult moments. But it does mean somebody who meets your soul, not your survival strategy. So it means that you have a connection built on mutual expansion, emotional safety, spiritual alignment, right? Encouragement. This person has your back. They want good things for you. You can be your whole self, not just your broken self. You get to be all of it, right? You can be broken sometimes. You can be high sometimes. You get to be your whole self, like every single part. And as you shift into a higher vibration, your entire landscape begins to favor peace over pain. And that means your relationships have to follow. It's like a mandatory expectation from the people in your life from this point forward that I can't have woundmates anymore. I need soulmates. I need people who cheer me on, who lift me up, who push me to be good and better, and actually really want to be there for the ride, and also take responsibility for themselves, are engaged in their own evolution, wanting to do their own work. Those are their soulmates that meet us in the same place that we're, versus before when you were in survival mode, you were meeting people from that space. And all relationships have the potential for a timestamp, which is just so strange because a lot of times if somebody told you 5 years ago that that relationship would change, most of us are like, no way, we're so tight, right? But reality is that a lot of relationships are just not meant to stay, right? They're not meant to be forever. I think that it does not mean less of the relationship. It doesn't mean that the relationship wasn't worthy or worth what you gave. I think a lot of times these relationships are lessons and they serve purpose and they were exactly what they needed to be exactly when they were. And those are the really wonderful jumping places that we can grow from, right? And I'm sure if you look back on any of your wound mates, you're looking at how did we grow? How did we change? And maybe they stayed stuck and you did change, or maybe they didn't shift in ways that really went in the same direction as you. Perhaps they were just different. But it definitely is worthwhile to acknowledge and to forgive and to allow that relationship to hold importance and to allow that person to, still receive your love from a distance. The truth is that we are evolving forever. There's a quote I came across. I believe it was Wayne Dyer. And he asked, can you get used to the fact that you are eternally unfinished, incomplete, that forever you are in an evolution that doesn't end? You never get to the finish line until you're no longer here. And that's not even a finish line, it's a chapter, as far as many of us are concerned, right? After this, there's something. And so in the expression of that, I think you can be inspired to say, yes, I am going to have to settle in and be okay with the fact that things are going to change. The relationships are going to change. Things I needed then aren't the same what I need now. And if I'm evolving as a human, it doesn't mean I have to be mad at somebody or have to cling to them and control them and try to get them to go where I'm going. That it's okay because everybody's on their own journey and you can try to allow yourself to hold space for that. So before we end here, I just want to say, take a moment to ask yourself, who are my soulmates? Do I have any right now? Who are my woundmates? Who were they? Maybe they're not in your life anymore. Maybe that shifted naturally or you went through it with them. But I want you to just acknowledge, yes, you've been there. Yes, I can name that. I can see that. And maybe you're going through it right now. where there's just a relationship that seems to be shifting and it's draining you. And that's another important point, is just like when a relationship drains you and it really wants to take you down, it wants you to stay in that toxic pattern. You have to ask yourself, how much is my peace worth? What is my overall goal here? What do I really want? And I do want you to ask yourself, what would it feel like to seek out relationships, and only relationships, rooted in joy, in growth, and emotional safety? What would it be like if you looked around, and even if it was just a couple, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be, crowds and crowds, but for you to ask yourself, what would it feel like for me to seek out relationships that were truly my cheerleaders, that were truly people felt overjoyed by my accomplishments, by my growth, by even watching me fall down and get back up, right? That we're in it together, but we are holding each other up and strengthening each other. And that's what you're looking for. And so I want you to ask yourself, where might you be choosing pain over peace? Where might you be perseverating on negative thinking and negative emotions versus allowing yourself to focus on good? So asking yourself, where am I still choosing pain, would be like, how often during the day am I focused on bad stuff? How often during the day am I focused on what's working versus what's not working, right? How often during the day am I allowed to say, wow, I'm going to bring in a real positive perspective here on all this? How often do you navigate through the difficult stuff and move yourself towards gratitude, peace, love, appreciation? And if you're not doing that work, I recommend you do. I recommend you see what it's like to hold peace, love, joy, and gratitude longer. And it really is a matter of being willing to really step into your healing, really step into the work, show up, be present. Recognize, that as you start your day, that you might need to get real intentional. I might need to say to myself, I am clearing out my relationships, and I am attracting beautiful, lovely, amazing people that are going to rise me up and help lift me up. And I'm going to find those people by raising my vibration. I'm going to find those people by truly stepping into my joy, being more love than not, finding myself in a frequency of appreciation more than not, because that's what I want to have back in return. And so allow yourself to release toxic patterns, allow yourself to step into practicing this new role even more that you really want for yourself, this higher vibration living where you can feel good more often. And remember, your healing in these relationships is not a betrayal. And I don't think you think it is, but I think that unconsciously there's guilt for a lot of people. And so I just want to say to you, your healing is not a betrayal. It's really just a becoming. It's your becoming. It's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. To stop it would be harmful to yourself. It's not good for you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's not good for you. So know that you're doing the right thing and follow your heart, what your red flags are telling you about a relationship. If you're uncomfortable in it, use your words, speak up, set a new boundary. And if that person can't come for the ride, then you have to decide what is right for you. And holding compassion really helps. Compassion for this change, compassion for you, compassion for them, and recognizing that you can have love and compassion for yourself, that, you were really stuck in a place for a while that was really hard, and allowing yourself to grow out of that is the best gift you can give yourself. So until next time, take care of your energy, protect your peace, and trust that pull towards wholeness and well-being and light and high vibration. I am here for it all. So I will look forward to talking with you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers. Until next time.